Thank you so much. Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, I'd like to use my time to complement what has already been shared by my distinguished co-panelists. I'll share some insights from an international law perspective, as well as highlighting some key opportunities within international fora for greater transparency and progress towards realizing the human rights of minorities, particularly religious minorities in Nepal. For reference, our organization, ADF International, is a faith-based legal advocacy group that coordinates with a broad alliance of lawyers, including those in Asia. And we have offices at various major institutions, including the UN in New York and Geneva, where we try to partner with governments and other actors to try to offer our legal expertise to help to advance human rights around the world. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, already mentioned a few times, to which Nepal acceded in 1991, lays out the core obligations pertaining to freedom of religion, expression, the rights of minorities, and the principles of non-discrimination and equal protection of the law. According to Article 18, the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion includes the freedom, either individually or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest one's religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. As aptly noted by the former Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, Heiner Bielefeld, freedom of religion or belief has a strong communicative dimension, which includes, among others, the freedom to communicate within one's own religious or belief group, the freedom to share one's conviction with others and to broaden one's own horizons by communicating with people of different convictions, the freedom to cherish and develop contacts across state boundaries, the freedom to receive and disseminate information about religious or belief issues, and the freedom to try to persuade others in a non-coercive manner. The right to propagate one's religion or belief through peaceful means is inseparable from the full enjoyment of the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, as well as freedom of expression. Now, let us be clear. This right is not absolute, as Bielefeld notes. If individuals or organizations try to convert people by resorting to means of coercion or by directly exploiting situations of particular vulnerability, protection by states against such practices may prove necessary. However, he goes on to clarify that any such restrictions can only be justified if they strictly meet all the criteria set out in international law, including the principles of legality, necessity, and proportionality. Critically, as observed by the Human Rights Committee, limitations on freedom of religion or belief, or any right for that matter, should proceed from the need to protect the rights in question and must not be applied in a manner that would vitiate those rights. In other words, the sharing of one's religious beliefs, including for the purpose of persuading others, cannot be subject to a blanket restriction, but may only be limited in those cases of genuine coercion or infringement on the rights of others. Importantly, such a limitation would need to protect individual rights holders, not religions or cultural heritage as such. Nepal's constitutional prohibition on religious conversion, as well as its corresponding penal code provisions, which we've heard about, currently fail to meet this threshold, resulting in legal ambiguity with serious ramifications for members of religious minorities, even when their legitimate expression may be regarded with suspicion at best, or met with serious legal consequence at worst, and we've heard a few testimonies of that kind. Now, beyond the requirement not to impose overbroad restrictions on the rights of minorities to exercise their freedoms, international law also calls on the government of Nepal to undertake enabling efforts for Christians and other religious minorities to enjoy their right without discrimination and with full equal protection from those who would threaten those rights, including non-state actors. This includes removing burdensome registration requirements for places of worship, guaranteeing access to adequate burial sites, and protecting minority members from harassment and violence perpetrated by mobs and radical groups. This also includes preventing so-called reconversion rituals, which we've had reports on, wherein non-Hindus are forcibly inducted into the majority religion on threat of violence or expulsion from their local communities. With all of this said, what steps can the government take toward fulfilling its human rights obligations? We have already heard about some key opportunities at the national level, including the constitutional amendment process. I'd like to add just a few notable avenues within international human rights mechanisms for the government's consideration. First, the Universal Periodic Review of Nepal, which is scheduled to be adopted tomorrow. ADF International, along with several other civil society organizations, raised these matters in our respective stakeholder submissions. Now, while the review itself has already concluded, there is ample opportunity for the government to make voluntary pledges pertaining to the particular situation of religious minorities and to incorporate these into its implementation plan ahead of the next cycle of the UPR. Secondly, the government may wish to consider submitting a national report to the Human Rights Committee, which in 2021 published its list of issues prior to reporting on Nepal. In it, the committee explicitly requested the government to share information on the situation of freedom of conscience and religious belief in the country, including responding to reports of criminalization of religious conversion, barriers to registration of religious minority associations, and difficulties in purchasing and accessing burial sites. Submitting a national report to inform a periodic review, the first in 12 years if submitted, would reflect the government's commitment to enhancing human rights protections in Nepal and create an opportunity for dialogue and cooperation in that regard. Finally, I commend Nepal for extending the invitation to allow the Special Rapporteur, Mr. Levrat, to conduct his invaluable country visit. Continued engagement with relevant special procedures mandate holders not only signals a commitment to transparency, but also opens the door to fruitful exchanges aimed at an exploration of best practices and possible law and policy reforms that can help further Nepal's implementation of its international obligations. We, as ADF International, and I'm certain the other panelists and sponsors share this sentiment, express our sincere desire to constructively engage with the Nepalese government and civil society, and to provide our support in promoting the advancement of human rights of the people of Nepal, including members of religious minorities. Thank you.